It's official, reportedly anyway. Cody Rhodes has signed his WWE contract. We have an update when it comes to the plans going forward for Rhodes in WWE, when he's expected to return to WWE television, plus possible WrestleMania plans for the American Nightmare. We have an update when it comes to Scott Hall's health prior to his passing earlier this week. Some news also when it comes to Brock Lesnar's recent match at Madison Square Garden. All this and more in today's WWE news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Saturday. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE. So let's start off with the news that everybody is talking about. That is Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes has reportedly officially signed his WWE contract. Cody Rhodes has officially signed with WWE, according to Mike Johnson of PW Insider. According to the report which broke just before SmackDown last night, Rhodes signed with the WWE actually 10 to 14 days ago. So we're talking a couple of weeks ago, which to be honest is really interesting, because it was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, that those reports started to come out saying that the negotiations between WWE and Cody Rhodes had started to fizzle out, when in reality he just put pen to paper. Very curious. I think it's also very interesting. Now, we've seen all of this stuff going on with Seth Rollins at the moment, right, when it comes to his situation WrestleMania. He doesn't have a match, and we have seen definitely on this week's Raw, whilst people did expect Cody Rhodes to show up in Jacksonville, he didn't. Some of the references that Corey Graves were dropping in were definitely through the headphones told by Vince McMahon. His dreams have been crushed, they've turned into a nightmare, all that kind of stuff. WWE has been quietly setting the scene for Cody Rhodes' return for at least the last couple of weeks, which again makes a lot of sense considering that he put pen to paper reportedly up to 2 weeks ago. Now, Johnson noted that the current plan is to have Rhodes debut WrestleMania weekend. As reported earlier, Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins has been rumored to take place at WrestleMania 38. Earlier this week, Dave Meltzer reported that the match was still listed internally for next month's event. WWE has been running an angle with Rollins currently not being able to find a path to WrestleMania. It's also been reported that Rhodes is expected to be on the Raw brand going forward. Now, this update when it comes to Cody Rhodes officially signing his WWE contract actually continued from a report by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, who again gave some new details, shall we say, about Cody Rhodes' signing a new contract. Cody Rhodes signing officially with WWE, I guess. And again, what the reaction has also been, I suppose, backstage in WWE. Now, Fightful Select, again, this report came after the news was broken by PW Insider. You have to give a hat tip to Mike Johnson, PW Insider. He's really been the first person to really put the neck out on the line, go, from what we've heard, Cody Rhodes has signed on the dotted line with WWE. Now, Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp actually said, look, we haven't been able to get confirmation on pen to paper, but they can also confirm that WWE has been operating as if Cody Rhodes is headed to WWE. Now, the Wrestling Observer, among others, has also reported that the lined-up match for Seth Rollins at WrestleMania is indeed Cody Rhodes. Fightful are reporting that is indeed the direction, but there were other, quote, huge pitches that were made along the way, but they haven't even been able to confirm if those pitches even made it to Rhodes personally. However, Seth Rollins has been the direction for some time when it pertains to Cody Rhodes in WWE. Even when some in creative were told there may have been a shift in plans regarding Cody possibly coming in, the Seth Rollins direction continued when it comes to Cody Rhodes there. Now, a source within WWE has also indicated to Fightful that travel has actually already been set for Cody Rhodes for WrestleMania Sunday, but also specified that that could change at any given moment to fit him in wherever they want him to appear on the show. So, whilst it's expected that he probably will be on WrestleMania Sunday, that could change. Things have been kind of shifting a little bit. You mentioned before that Edge versus AJ Styles was originally set for Sunday. Now it's not set for any day, so we're not really sure where that's going to go. People close to Cody Rhodes have denied that travel has been set for the show, but of course they're going to deny it, because if they go, yeah, travel's been set, it'll be like, oh, actually, that means he signed. So they're trying to keep it as low-key as possible, one would assume. They've said that that was inaccurate information. However, those within WWE are working on the notion that Rhodes was planned for Night 2 as of this week. Again, that comes from Fightful Select. It would also be noted that those in AEW that Fightful have spoken to believe that Cody Rhodes won't appear until WrestleMania, though that's their personal speculation and not really rooted in anything that they've heard from the WWE side of things. Fightful said that they've reached out to Rhodes and his team, but haven't heard back as of anything right now. So that's the situation with WWE and Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is signed with WWE, according to PW Insider. Not many other people are able to confirm that, but as is the general report now, whether it's PW Insider, Fightful, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, that essentially WWE has been operating that Cody Rhodes is going to be coming in. The reason why they've been operating like that is because he signed a contract. So it's not really, I suppose, surprising news. The reason why it's big is because, look, still the idea of Cody Rhodes going back to WWE is still incredibly surreal. He was an AEW EVP. He is very good at playing the social media game, it must be mentioned as well, because after this report broke last night, he quote tweeted, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of AEW's first pandemic show. That show that was meant to be in Rochester, New York. Instead, it was in an empty Daily's place, and it had the debuts, of course, of Mr. Brody Lee, Matt Hardy, and actually opened, of course, with a bit of a cold open of Cody Rhodes standing in the ring, spotlight on him, and trying to offer some words of encouragement and support and, I guess, calmness to what was a crazy situation at the time. And he spoke about, that it was a crazy production. There was only a couple of people in there. There was no countdown. It was just kind of go, and then he did the promo and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, he's telling a story about that. But it's also no coincidence that he just happened to tweet when he was trending. Just so happened to tweet at that period of time. Almost as if he knew that people were talking about him because this news had come out. So he's been very, very clever about it all. Look, I think a lot of people still expected Cody to come in. The biggest frustration personally with all of this that's been going on the last few weeks is just the avalanche of just misinformation really out there of, we think he's coming in, but he might not be coming in. He could be showing up on Monday, but he might not be showing up at all. People didn't know. That's realistically the situation. Nobody really knew. Everyone kind of had a deep down gut feeling, he's probably going to WWE, but no one really knew. This is the first proper report, PW Insider, the first proper report that said, no, he is coming in, definitive. He has put pen to paper. He's going to be at WrestleMania. He's going to be facing Seth Rollins. That's the situation. Prior to that, it had all been hearsay and speculation. So I think, again, you have to give credit to Mike Johnson of PW Insider. It still was very surreal, and I think the conversation about what's Rhodes going to do after WrestleMania? What is his position on the brand going forward? I don't know. And I think that's fascinating. He's going to beat Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. If you can imagine he comes in and does a job as an unadvertised surprise, he comes in and loses, not going to happen. I think the biggest question going forward now will be, he's on Raw, which is somewhat surprising because it's not the A show in WWE. I mean, it still gets, 1.7 million viewers most weeks, but it's not the A show. SmackDown is, because it's on the bigger network. It's on Fox. It's on network television. Gets over 2 million viewers every week. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that he's been kept away from Roman Reigns, because anyone that goes on that show is going to be dwarfed and overshadowed by the biggest star in pro wrestling right now, which is Roman Reigns. So that's not a bad thing. I would also think it's quite curious that he's going on to a brand that's probably going to have no champion after WrestleMania, and we know it's going to get a champion. Whilst there is going to be a unified WWE Championship at WrestleMania after Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, they're splitting those bouts again. I wouldn't be shocked if the first, whatever it's called, WWE Champion, Raw Champion, I don't know what they'll call that bout. I wouldn't be surprised if the first guy to win it is Cody Rhodes, and maybe that's why he's gone to Monday Night Raw. But it's a big story. People are obviously talking about it. It's kind of the CM Punk AEW kind of situation, right? In that it's a thing that's been reported, widely speculated. Cody Rhodes hasn't confirmed it. WWE certainly won't confirm it. And it's kind of that cool now where it's like people are going to go into WrestleMania Night 2, or whichever is the Rollins segment. We'll find out closer to the time, I would think. But whatever night's the Seth Rollins night, people will go into that night knowing that Cody Rhodes is going to make his return then. And it's the speculation and it's the hype until then. And I'm very curious to see how it goes and how it plays out, particularly after WrestleMania. But it's a huge story, absolutely. Switching gears here, let's talk about the late Scott Hall. Now, obviously, still so many people reeling after the passing of Scott Hall. Incredibly sad. And we've had some more information as it comes to Scott Hall's health in the years prior to this. Of course, look, he's got a huge history of demons, alcoholism, drug abuse, etc. And it was hoped that he had really turned the corner on that after moving in with DDP and Jake the Snake in the accountability crib in 2013, 2014, 2015. By all accounts, though, the last few years had been particularly tough on the bad guy. Now, two-time WWE's Hall of Famer Scott Hall reportedly suffered health issues during the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course led to his fall at home, which of course ultimately led to his passing this week. Hall's longtime friend, WWE Hall of Famer Sean Waltman, spoke to the Wrestling Observer newsletter this week and noted that he called Hall about a month ago to come out and stay with him in California because Hall's health had been deteriorating over the past 2 years due to his alcohol use. It was noted that Hall's close friends actually felt like his passing was coming, but there was nothing they could really do about it. Waltman said that the COVID-19 pandemic was hard on Hall as he had dropped down to 210 pounds. Waltman also revealed that the WWE Hall of Famer DDP once again was called in to help Hall as he lived in nearby Georgia. Waltman said, quote, "The pandemic did him in. It was hard enough for him as it was, but he was isolated in his house with no social interaction. He was down to 210 pounds. We called Dally and he went over. It was really bad." Now, regarding that recent fall, Hall broke his hip and was unable to move. This is when it gets really, really sad, folks. And it's quite hard to even read. He was reportedly laying on the ground, unable to get to a phone for a period of time. It was noted that Hall laid on the ground for actually a few days before friends told DDP to go and check in on him, since they couldn't get into contact with Scott Hall. Page ultimately found Hall and got him to the hospital. Regarding the NWO's Hall of Fame induction last year, because some people will say, well, Hall was at the Hall of Fame induction last year and he looked okay. Well, Hall was said to actually be in really bad shape the night before the NWO's WWE Hall of Fame induction last year. He reportedly passed out in a bar the night before the induction, but no sold it the next night of the ceremony. Hall was also in rough shape at an appearance in late 2021 at the Stockton Comic-Con. He had missed his bookings as of recently too. It was believed by many that Hall had been working through his drinking issues and substance abuse issues thanks to Page, and that he had kicked the issues and things were turning around. However, Waltman noted that there were times that was at least close to being the case, but things had got really bad over the last 2 years. So that's kind of an update as to, I guess, the final few years and days prior to Scott Hall's passing, which again, I was kind of unsure whether to talk about that ultimately today, because I think it should be at the moment it should be about celebrating Scott Hall's life and his career and not really focusing on the negatives, but I think it's also important to add context to it. Certainly not in the case that we as fans deserve to know. I hate that notion. Nobody is entitled to know anyone's medical history or medical records. The only reason I speak about it today really is because Sean Waltman, of course, his best friend, close friend, spoke openly about it. And that's, I guess, almost part of the legacy of Scott Hall, is that he did have his demons and he battled with them to the very day he died. He battled with them. And I think it should serve as a sobering reminder, you know, that all that stuff is very, very real. And just the idea of him, you know, falling and breaking his hip and not being able to grab a phone and just laying there for days, you know, is horrible, absolutely horrible. And, you know, continued thoughts and prayers go out to his family. I saw that Cody Howard and Scott Hall's daughter had spent some time with Diamond Dallas Page in recent days, having a meal and all that kind of stuff. But it's just such a sad story. And like I said, I don't want to dwell too much on the sadness and the negatives or anything like that, because I think at this moment in time we should be focusing on the legacy and the career and the positive contributions that Scott Hall made, not just in his career but his life. And yeah, I think that's best remembered that way. Let's switch gears here and talk about the recent WWE Madison Square Garden show. Now, of course, they've shown this package, of course, of Roman Reigns attacking Brock Lesnar after the main event at Madison Square Garden several times, before Raws, before SmackDowns in recent weeks. They showed it again before last night's SmackDown. And a lot of people have spoken about the blood, because that's been focused on quite a lot on WWE television. Brock Lesnar saying he's going blood for blood. You changed the game when you made me bleed, all that kind of stuff. It's led to people speculating, did Brock Lesnar blade at Madison Square Garden? He did not, according to reports. WWE Champion Brock Lesnar reportedly did not blade to cut himself at the recent live event in MSG in New York City. There had been some speculation on Lesnar doing a blade job, which of course WWE absolutely prohibits and bans. The Wrestling Observer is reporting that word going around says Lesnar was busted open hard way from the steps. WWE reportedly wanted this to be a blood angle, which again I just find hilarious. I find absolutely hilarious, because so this is the same company, right? This is the same company that is throwing comments out there about self-mutilation, AEW self-mutilation, they're bleeding buckets on TBS and TNT, and the women are bleeding, and terrible, terrible, terrible. But they're okay if the blood wasn't from a blade, but they wanted blood in the first place. So whilst Brock Lesnar didn't blade, the blood was intentional. We've seen Brock Lesnar do this so many times. Brock Lesnar's the king, frankly, of getting hardway busted open. How many times has he run his head into the steel ring post to get color? He's done it so many times. Or if it's WWE getting Brock Lesnar to elbow people in the eyebrow to split them open because they want blood. I really don't see the difference. The art of doing it is much safer, in my opinion, than hit me as hard as you can with the steps in the corner so you can cut my head open. That is far more reckless and far less protected. You're really running the risk of concussion there. So and again, I have no issues with blood. I really don't. There have been some cases, definitely recently at Revolution, where you go, maybe a bit too much blood. I mean, but I don't really have an issue with it. I just find it staggering. And again, I like the angle. I thought the angle was good. I thought it added something to this WrestleMania match. And again, the fact that they've shown this vignette, this promo so many times for Raw and SmackDown recently shows how effective it was. But the idea of, no, we didn't blade. We did it properly, hard way. How is that safer? I just again, that kind of blows my mind a little bit. A couple other things before we wrap things up here. Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn's got a new stipulation. Sami Zayn last night on SmackDown challenged Knoxville to an anything goes stipulation for their match at WrestleMania. Johnny Knoxville later accepted, which makes sense because, I mean, we saw Johnny Knoxville in the Royal Rumble. Frankly, it's staggering that he's resting anyway, considering what he went through on the latest Jackass film. He had a brain hemorrhage. That was enough to retire. I mean, less than that was enough to retire Daniel Bryan. So the fact that Johnny Knoxville was having a match and the guy he's facing has a finisher of a kick to the head is mental, frankly. Nevertheless, of course it makes sense because they've got to do smoke and mirrors. Johnny Knoxville, it's not like Bad Bunny last year. Or it's not like, say, Logan Paul this year where, Bad Bunny, whilst he might not be known as the most athletic guy, he worked hard, he trained. He was training from January to April. So by the time it came around, he could go somewhat. Logan Paul, look, he's an athlete, right? He was a collegiate wrestler. He's done boxing. Of course, he's in great shape. So I'm sure that he'll actually do quite a surprisingly good job, to be honest, at WrestleMania. Johnny Knoxville ain't that guy. Johnny Knoxville is a stuntman. He's an actor, of course, but he's a stuntman too. So anything goes, kind of his smoke and mirrors. There might be some bumps. I'm sure as well, probably the other Jackass guys will show up, whether it's Steve-O, whether it's Wee Man, whether it's whoever. They'll all show up and they'll all do some stuff. So that's probably why they've gone with that. And it's the smart call. It absolutely is a smart call. We also have a change to the women's tag team title match at WrestleMania as well. This has been rumoured for a long time anyway, but the fourth team has been added into this match, that being Natalya and Shayna Baszler. They attacked Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley and Sasha Banks and Naomi last night on SmackDown, and now they've been added by Sonya Deville. To be honest, no disrespect to any of them, but I really don't, care all of that much because the women tag team titles don't mean anything. I just look at this match and I say, man, I understand not everyone can have a big match at WrestleMania, but Sasha Banks is so much better than all of this. I mean, she's just a massive star, and if she's not winning that match, then what is she doing at WrestleMania? I find that kind of staggering, frankly. Finally, we have an update when it comes to NXT 2.0 viewership on the USA Network. And USA Network officials are happy with the TV viewership numbers under NXT 2.0, according to Andrew Zarian of the Matman podcast. Zarian reported on his podcast that he had recently spoken to a USA Network employee. He said, quote, "They're doing good in the ratings, 620,000-ish. They're not doing terrible. USA Network is happy with this. I had a conversation with someone on Tuesday from USA, and they're like, yeah, we're fine with 6-somethings because, listen, even with that slammed roster, with like NXT being NXT, they were doing 700,000. USA Network doesn't care if there are some WWE guys there. They just want ratings. I think they're happy with the 600 and something rating, 620, 650, 700 for like a big show. That's like a decent range. Yeah, that's not bad. So apparently NXT are happy with it. And I understand. I guess I understand because, I guess the report is saying that realistically, what's the massive difference when it comes to ratings in NXT? I think they've gone down somewhat from what they were doing in the Wednesday Night Wars, but not really considerably. And I guess the idea is that actually, just bring in your occasional WWE main roster guys like they're doing with AJ Styles or Mysterios or whoever they're doing it with, or Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode, and they might get a bit of a bump, and that's all really they care about. So reportedly they're happy. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.